بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله حمد الشاكرين الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله دائما وأبدا الحمد لله على كل حال ونعوذ بالله من حال أهل النار اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وأنعم وأكرم على سيد الخلق حبيبنا وشفيعنا وقرة أعيننا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم صلاة تنجينا وآباءنا وأمهاتنا من النيران اللهم صل عليه في الأولين وصل عليه في الآخرين وصل وسلم وبارك اللهم على نبينا محمد في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين. We begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and thanking Him. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for every and each blessing that He's given us. Ya Allah, we thank you for the blessing of today. We thank you, O Allah, for the blinking of our eyes even if we're not aware of it. We thank you, O Allah, for the beating of our hearts even though we're not doing anything to cause it. We thank you, O Allah, for every moment of life, and specifically every moment of guidance. Beyond the walls of this masjid, beyond the hara of Bridgeview, there are so many people that have never tasted the sweetness of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. We thank you, O Allah, for the gift of La ilaha illallah. And we thank you, O Allah, for the gift of Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We thank you, O Allah, for these gatherings, the gatherings of Ignite, the gatherings of the Mosque Foundation. We thank you, O Allah, for making us from those who made it into your house, who were invited to be in your remembrance. And we ask you, O Allah, to allow us to be invited to a gathering like this again and again. Allahumma ameen. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I feel like one of the challenges that we have is that oftentimes these gatherings become normal. They become expected. They almost become something that's routine, that maybe I'll go and maybe I'll not go. And it's totally understandable. And yet the reality is that each and every single one of the Ignite programs, the Seeking Shade programs, all of the activities taking place from here, my dear brother and my sister, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them to us, and each one of these gatherings, I swear to you by Allah, is more valuable than the world and everything in it. These gatherings are a treasure. Just to be seen by the malaika right now, to be seen in the house of Allah, seeking to fill your heart. You can fill your heart with so many things, with Instagram accounts, with people, with all of these different things, with celebrity status, with all of these different things, but choosing to silence the world around you, to come here and to be in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something worth celebrating every single day. And so we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that. We also thank the brothers and the sisters who are on the Ignite team, the organizers, the mashayikh of this masjid. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward them infinitely for everything that they do to make these gatherings possible. So take a moment, even if you just came here because your friend is coming here, take a moment and do tajdeed an-niyyah. Renew your intention, and let me renew my intention right now that we are here for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We've been talking about being in the footsteps of giants. And as a person that's like particularly not that tall, it's a big deal to be in the footsteps of giants, to find someone that has succeeded in so many different capacities, these people that are role models and all-stars of our tradition, and to be able to spend some time getting to know them. You know, the fascinating thing about human beings, and Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah, he talks about this, is that regardless of how much confidence we may have, regardless of the intelligence, the GPA, whatever you may have going for you, to some degree, every human is following someone else, right? You may feel like, man, I don't know what you're talking about. I got 1,000 followers online, 2,000 views on TikTok, as if that even really means anything. Like, I'm not following anyone, people are following me. And yet the reality is that the nature of the human being, part of us being ibad or servants, and part of us being fuqara and masakeen, all of the creation of Allah is fuqara ilallah, or poor and needy and impoverished to Allah, part of that innate nature of us being faqir and miskeen and being a abd is that we naturally will follow something or someone. So if I know that I'm going to follow someone, then let me choose who I'm going to follow. If I know that I'm going to identify to dress like someone, to get a haircut like someone, to wear hijab like someone, to talk to my mom like someone, to act at school like someone, to get a job like someone, we're constantly embodying the actions of someone or something else, then it might be a good idea to choose who our role models are, because you're following someone regardless. And so I was so happy and appreciative of the leadership of Ignite and the leadership of this masjid creating this program of In the Footsteps of Giants, because one of the greatest tragedies, and I don't use the word tragedy lightly, is that we don't know the all-stars of our tradition. We don't know them well. We don't know their stories. We don't know their struggles. We don't know the challenges, the obstacles, the difficulties that they faced in their marriages, the challenges that they faced financially, what it was like for them to be students, what it was like for them to be teachers. And so I think it is so valuable to have opportunities like this to say, I am no doubt a follower. Let me choose who I'm going to follow. And who better to follow than the greatest of generations to ever walk this earth, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. And we cannot follow a people that we don't know. A few days ago we had the program, Prophetic Prescription, and we talked about it in light of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We talked about creating kind of like almost like a character portrait of who he is, and every single day, you know how you look in the mirror and you fix your hijab. I don't particularly fix my hijab because there's not much hair to cover, but nonetheless, you fix your hat, you comb your beard, you text your barber letting him know it's been 2 Thursdays since you got a haircut. You do everything you need to do to make sure you present yourself well. There's an image you see and there's an image you want to be. The image that you and I ought to be must be Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as an extension of wanting to look like and be like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, rahmatul lil alameen, the mercy to mankind, as an extension of that, we want to be like the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum. And so spending all of this to say that this is an incredible series to get to know some of those legends of the past. Who have you all talked about so far? Who can share? Pop quiz in the finale. Why not? Who have you guys talked about so far? How many of you guys have attended a session in this series? Raise your hand. It's like a random poll, a survey we weren't asked for. Who did you guys talk about? Ka'ab Ibn Malik. Okay. MashaAllah. What's something from him that you wish to follow? Beautiful, his patience, right? And even sabr in Arabi is closer to resilience than even just patience, right? Resilience is your ability to work through adversity. Patience is sitting in the adversity. Resilience is working through the adversity or the challenges you're facing, right? I want you to think about this in context of your life, right? Like it's not just enough to be in the midst of the challenge, but to actually work through it. That's sabr. It's like perseverance or resilience. Like, who else did you guys talk about in this series? Who else did you guys talk about? خلاص كعب ibn Malik, انتهى الكلام. Who else? Who else did you guys talk about? Like, this is why I always encourage snacks before the talk. You know what I mean? It helps, especially if there's caffeine involved. Sisters, you're usually more on top of this than the brothers, sarahatan yani. Please save me. No one else? Ka'ab ibn Malik. Series finale was 2 parts. Ka'ab ibn Malik and today Abdullah ibn Abbas. Yes, Habibi. He's like on edge. He's like, do I speak or do I hold my peace? Yes. Abu Ubaidah, mashallah. What did you're like, oh, here's the follow-up question. You can use a lifeline. What do you remember? What part of Abu Ubaidah will you follow, inshallah? Radiyallahu ta'ala anil jamii'. You can use a lifeline. You want to use a lifeline before you know what a lifeline. You can phone a friend. You can ask one of the mashayikh to make dua for you. You don't. What do you tell me? One thing you remember about his life. A- Anyone want to? Anyone want to help the brother? Yes, yes, brother. I'm sorry. Okay, beautiful, mashallah. Made a lot of sacrifices to follow Islam, right? And so, again, these are just, I want us to actively engage with these personalities. I want it to change from us coming here, my dear brothers and sisters, honestly, wallah, take this as a nasiha min al-qalbi ila al-qalb, from my heart to your heart. This is not a storytelling session. There's a lot better storytellers on YouTube. This is about finding individuals and seeing how we connect with them. And wallahi, the more there's a collection of stories and the lives of the Sahaba and the noble people of our tradition called Siyar A'lam al-Nubala, right? If you go and you delve into these stories, you'll find someone like you, and someone like your mother, and someone like your friend, and someone like your teacher. And then at different parts of your life, different people will connect with you in different ways. And so learning to engage with these people will allow you to not just discover them, but wallahi, you will discover yourself while you are discovering them. And that is as good as it gets. Discovering yourself within the lives of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum. But I'll take you a step further and we'll begin to talk about Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu. But I hope that we set the tone of how we engage with the Sahaba and the generations after them. And the first thing that I'll say is that Abdullah ibn Abbas was born in a particularly challenging time. Abdullah ibn Abbas was born in around the 10th year of Hijrah. And this time, the 10th year of Hijrah, was in fact the exact same time that the Muslims in Mecca were being what? Boycotted. Anyone here studied the Hijrah before? Anyone here ever read a good Hijrah book or maybe listen to a lecture series online? You remember that there was a period of time when the believing women and men were being boycotted. And they were very limited in the space that they were living in, and they were particularly limited in the resources that they had access to. Food and nourishment. And there's too much to talk about this time that they were being boycotted by the kuffar of Quraysh, right? And yet what is one of the things that happened during that time? Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu was born during that time. We haven't even started his life yet. What is the lesson there? What is the lesson there? The lesson there, my dear brothers and sisters, is that sometimes in the darkest chapters of your life, Allah gives a little light that will become one of the greatest sources of happiness for you. They were in the middle of a boycott. Imagine, like, the Starbucks down the street from my house was under construction for 2 months. I started making dua, oh Allah, reopen the Starbucks. Imagine a full-on boycott. No access to food, to water, to drinks, to resources, to your family, to your relatives. And in the midst of all of that tragedy, young children and women and men, their lives were completely altered and changed in a very challenging way. And yet in the midst of all of that, Abdullah ibn Abbas was born radiallahu ta'ala anhu. What does that tell us? That tells us that even in the darkest hours, even when you're struggling with sadness, even when you're struggling with depression, even when you feel like your parents' marriage is on the brink of divorce, even if you're struggling with whatever type of physical illnesses, you find out that a loved one has cancer or whatever the case may be, so many of us are going through so many different challenges in our life. And it doesn't even have to be that traumatic. It could be as simple as being kicked out of a WhatsApp or Snapchat group and it making you highly offended, right? It could be that little. But think about the midst of that darkness, and sometimes in the midst of that darkness, Allah Jalla Jalaluh gives you a light you can't even begin to see. Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu was born in a time when the ummah was in a state of incredible challenges and difficulty. And sometimes when we are in the midst of challenges in our life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins to show us light from the least expected of places. And Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, not only was he born, you have to think about it at this point in time. If he was born in the 10th year, what does that tell you about him? That he was likely, during the time that he became a Sahabi, he was younger than every single person in this room, with the exception of maybe Abdullah in the back and the cute little baby that Sheikh Sinan is holding. That with the exception of those two, that Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the entirety of him being a companion, the ending of him transitioning from being a companion, the entirety of him living in the presence of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ended when he was about 13 years old. 13 years old. And I want us to walk through this period of time. So he's born in the 10th year, meaning in that time of trial and tribulation. But then he doesn't even get the chance to live with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or meet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or be in the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam until he is about 10 years old. And the scholars say that the amount of time that he spent with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was exactly just about taqriban 30 months. The entirety of him being under the tutelage and the guidance of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was 30 months. And I want you to think about what that means, about how young he was. I'll tell you, when I was 10 years old, I was like one of those GameCube people, like, which we all know is like less superior than the other consoles. I was playing GameCube, I was chilling, mostly like just a lot of hot Cheetos in my life, right? Like unnecessary amounts, which I've paid for with my health recently. But nonetheless, like that was me at 10 years old. Abdullah ibn Abbas at 10 years old dedicated his life to being under the tutelage of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, studying from the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasallam. And what does this tell us? This tells us, number one, he grew up in hardship, but he grew up with a solid relationship with his mother and father. He grew up with a solid ability to lean onto his mother and father. And as he grew and his mother entered Islam and he entered Islam and then his father entered Islam, he had the basis to choose to live Islam for himself. And dear brothers and sisters, one of the greatest choices that you can make in your life right now is to choose Islam, to choose to be Muslim. Not to be Muslim because of your ethnic background, because you're Palestinian, you're Pakistani, you're Yemeni. Not to choose to be Muslim because it's the easiest thing with the least amount of drama. But to choose to be Muslim because أَفَمَنْ شَرَحَ اللَّهُ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ فَهُوَ عَلَى نُورٍ مِّن رَبِّهِ. As for the one who expands their chest for Islam and leaves their heart empty for anything and everything but Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gifts them a special light. What does this light do, my dear brother and sister? It guides you through every chapter of your life. You might be thinking, I don't know what this thought guy is doing. I don't know what he's talking about. I've chosen Islam every single day. But every single day that we wake up is an opportunity for us to choose to be followers of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And every single day is an opportunity to do that. So from a very young age, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he chose to be exactly that. He chose to be a person that followed and lived by La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And after he made the migration, it said that there was very few people that had accessibility to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the way that Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu did. Why do you think that is? Why did he have that accessibility to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam? Anyone want to take a wild guess? Why did he have such great accessibility to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam? There's a hand. I cannot see. Tell me. What is his relation to the Prophet ﷺ? He's the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ. And what is another connection that he has? Who did the Prophet ﷺ marry? Who did the Prophet ﷺ marry? Yes. The Prophet ﷺ absolutely married Khadija, and amongst his other wives is Maymuna. And Maymuna is, what is her relation to Ibn Abbas?
Sister.
Maymuna's relationship to Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhum is that it is his khalto. And all of us love to visit our khalto. All of us love to go and compare our khalto's makluba to our mom's makluba, right? All of us love to have the opportunity to spend time with our aunts. And he had the opportunity not only to be in the company of his auntie, but to be in the company of the Prophet ﷺ. And I want to pause here because I think there is a very, very valuable lesson even in this. And that lesson, my dear brothers and sisters, is that we all have people in our life that we ought to be learning from. And they don't have to be particularly popular. They don't have to be high-level scholarship. They certainly don't have to have a social media following. But what would it look like for you to learn directly from those who inherited from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? In this masjid and across the Chicagoland area, we are gifted with mashayikh and teachers and scholars, male and female, who we ought to be clinging to and benefiting from every part of who they are. I'll tell you that, subhanAllah, something that I appreciated a lot was going on drives with my shaykh, rahmatullahi alayh. He would drive for different responsibilities, to run different errands, and some of the most valuable life lessons I didn't learn from him while we were reading books together. It wasn't when we were covering text together. It was, in fact, sitting in the car with him, learning from his adab, learning from his manners, learning from his knowledge, learning from his nasiha, learning from just being in his company, watching him pray, watching him take care of his children, watching him talk to his mother on the phone, watching him responding to his wife, watching all of these different things, rahmatullahi alayhi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him. That was an opportunity for me to learn from him that wallahi, there is not a day in my life that goes by except that I miss it. And so learning to take advantage. Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he only had 30 months with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But you find narrations, my dear brothers and sisters, wallahi, it gives you goosebumps. Naturally, what's Ibn Abbas going to do? He's going to spend the night at his khalta's house, obviously, right? Everyone spends at least a couple of nights trying to hang out at their khalta's house. And so he spends the night there, but who else is he spending the night with? He's spending the night in the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So we got a hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam waking up. And Ibn Abbas sensing that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam woke up, so Ibn Abbas observing how the Prophet ﷺ woke up. And then we learn from Ibn Abbas how the Prophet ﷺ woke up at night. How beautiful is that? Then he said, I would watch the Prophet ﷺ make wudu. And then I used to use the leftover water after the Prophet ﷺ would complete his wudu, and I would make dua exactly how I observed the Prophet ﷺ make wudu. And then I would watch the Prophet ﷺ pray, and I would pray exactly how he prayed, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he did this for days. One time, the Prophet ﷺ noticed that he was doing this, and so he says, "Okay, after you make your wudu, O Ibn Abbas, come and pray next to me." Ibn Abbas was a young kid. He's probably like 12 years old at this point of time. And what does he do? He goes and he makes his wudu. The Prophet ﷺ told him to pray where? Next to him. Where did Ibn Abbas pray? Behind the Prophet ﷺ. And so after he finished his salah, the Prophet ﷺ says, Ya Ibn Abbas, I told you to come and pray next to me. He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals the Quran to you from Angel Jibreel. Anta Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You are the messenger of Allah. Who am I to pray next to you? My dear brothers and sisters, he is 12 years old. The Prophet ﷺ raised his hands in the darkness of the night. And he says, "Oh Allah, grant Abdullah wisdom and grant him knowledge." And on multiple occasions, the Prophet ﷺ would take Ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Abbas, this young boy, under the age of 13, and he would hug him and he would embrace him and he would raise his hands and he would make dua for Abdullah ibn Abbas because of the amount of time that he spent learning from him. Abdullah ibn Abbas, he says himself, he says that I memorized a portion of the Quran, which is al-Mufassal, which is that last portion of the Quran during the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Who do you think he was reciting to? The Prophet and Messenger of Allah. Who do you think he was reciting to? Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, the mothers of the believers. My dear brothers and sisters, many of us have chosen to be average people. Many of us have chosen to be just another wallah bro, wallah mode. Many of us chose to say, you know what, I know Juzu Amma, I finished it at Siddiq school and intah al-kalam, rahmatullahi ala al-jamia. Inshallah, I can pray my salawat for the rest of my life and that's about it. But then there are those amongst us who say, you know what, we will strive for excellence. I'm going to be a hafiz. I don't care if I become a hafiz at 40, at 50, at 60, and 70. I don't care if I never become hafiz. I want Allah to see me try. I want Allah to see me try. Thinking about what it looks like to be a people like Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu wa anil jami' who every single day choose to try to be better Muslims and more literate and knowledgeable Muslims. And that term I'm using intentionally. Choosing to be a literate Muslim. Choosing to be a Muslim that's well versed in your deen. That as you grow, new things will come in your path, and to learn the deen that you need to know. One day, inshallah ta'ala, you will all decide that you want to get married. Understand the fiqh of marriage. One day you'll choose to start a business. Understand the Islamic law behind starting a business. One day you may decide that you, inshallah ta'ala, are going to raise your child. Understand what our tradition teaches us about raising children. This requires us to be tullab ilm, to be students of knowledge. Not to say, wallahi, that's for those people. That's for the people that go to the Quran Institute. That's for the people that wear the dishdasha to the masjid. Those are for the people that they're not even chill on Sundays. That's for those people. No. This deen, my dear sister and my dear brother, I swear by Allah, this deen is for you. And every part of you, and every part of your life is beautified from this deen. But it can only be beautified if you do what Ibn Abbas does. If you learn it, if you love it, and if you choose to live this deen. How can I bring my deen into UIC? How can I bring my deen even into a place like Sandbridge? Shots fired, right? How can I bring my deen into every single part of how do I bring my deen into my relationship with my mother, my father, my particularly annoying sibling? How do I bring my deen into how I drive on the road, even in Bridgeview, which is a particularly difficult place to drive around, right? How do I bring my deen into every part of my life? That is the model of Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala. I'll tell you, after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, you have to look at it from the lens of Ibn Abbas. Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu anil jami', he could have thrown in the towel. He could have said, you know what, 30 months, it was fun while it lasted, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, now I'm going to go, he's just 13 years old, I'm going to go live my best life. But you know what he did? In fact, he's the narrator of this hadith, of this narration. He says, I went up to one of my colleagues from the Ansar, and I said, you know what we have to do? Right now we live in a time when there's a lot of Sahaba. There's a lot of Muhajirin and there's a lot of Ansar. We have to go to them and we have to learn every single thing from them that we ought to know about Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We need to know it for the sake of the ummah. These are the words of Ibn Abbas. 13 years old, he goes up to his friend, imagine this happens at lunch at school. And he says, We need to go to all of the seniors. We need to go to all of the Sahaba. We need to go to Abu Bakr, Bilal, Umar, Uthman, Ali, radiallahu ta'ala an al-jami'. And we need to learn every single thing that we can learn from them. And you know what that friend of his said to him? That colleague of his said to him? He said to him words that are sharp, that are painful. He says, do you think that people will ever need Islam from us? Do you think people will ever, أَيَفْتَقِرُ النَّاسِ إِلَيْنَا? Do you think people will ever turn to us for their deen? Or that they will rely on us for their deen? The narration continues from exactly that man. He says, I grew up and I grew to be old. And I saw no gatherings of knowledge greater and larger and more impactful than the gatherings of Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Because he chose to be that guy. He went to Sayyidina Umar. He went to Uthman. He went to that Quran class. He went to that hadith class. He sacrificed the hangouts. He gave up on particular activities and fun events. He cut the cord on problematic and toxic relationships. He chose not to be with the cool crowd who were getting engaged in problematic behaviors that we all know of and don't need to be listed. He says, no, that's not my path. He sat at the footsteps of the Sahaba, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, and he became one of the greatest scholars from amongst, not the scholars, not the tabi'een. He became from the greatest scholars from the Sahaba kiram themselves. Even the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum, they began to go to him for knowledge. That is what happens when you dedicate your life to learning this deen, loving this deen, and living this deen. In fact, there's a narration, and I'll end you with this because I wanted to open it up, and there's too much to talk about Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala. There's a really funny, it's a very unique narration. That is that as Ibn Abbas was getting older and the gatherings of knowledge became bigger, it became unmanageable for people to come and learn from him. So Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala, he would go to a space and he would say, bring me everyone that has questions about the recitation of the Quran, the different qira'at. And all of those people would come to him. And then he would answer all of their questions and he would give them more than that. And then he would say, you have brothers and sisters waiting to ask me on other matters. And then they would leave. Then Ibn Abbas would say, bring me everyone who has a question surrounding the tafsir of the Quran. And everyone and their mother from Medina and across the Arabian Peninsula that had a question about the tafsir of the Quran would come and they would sit and they would all ask their questions. And all of their answers, all of their questions would be answered and they would be given more. And then Ibn Abbas would say, you have brothers and sisters waiting to ask me other than this. Then he would say, bring me everyone that has a question surrounding fiqh. The fiqh of marriage, the fiqh of business, the fiqh of life, the ups and downs of every part of life, bring them to me. And Abdullah ibn Abbas would answer all of their questions. And then he would say, you have brothers and sisters who have questions to ask other than you. And again, until no one was left to answer any questions. This, dear brothers and sisters, this one narration, no one in the history of the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, till we sit here in 2023, has ever been able to manage, to navigate that level of expertise, of knowledge, like Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu. All because he chose. Number one, he chose Islam. Number two, he chose to spend time with the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. Then he chose to study this deen. And then he chose to live it and teach it. Let me ask you, what choices have we made? What choices are we making? Your choices make an impact. The choices you make of who your friends are. The choices you make of what teams you end up joining. The choices you make of the schools you go to, the Quran classes you join, the Islamic durus, lessons that you go to. Wallahi, my dear brothers and sisters, I know what it's like to go to a dars where the youngest person after you in the group is 30 years older than you. And yes, it's awkward. I've been in that position. I know what it's like to go to gatherings where you feel like the odd one out because you're not doing the problematic things like everyone else is doing. I know what it's like, and we ask Allah to grant you and I istiqamah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us thabat and firmness of faith. Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And every single giant of our tradition, we're following the footsteps of these giants. They became the giants that they became because of the choices that they make. So I ask you again, and I'll end you with this. What choices are you making? Of your friends, of the places you go to, of the things that you're learning, of the lives that you're living. Choose the way that Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu chose. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to choose that which is best for our dunya and to help us to choose that which is best for our akhirah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be pleased with all of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum and to grant us their company in Jannah. هذا والله أعلم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
Allah khairan, Shaykh. We have quite a few questions, mashallah, today. Feel free, anyone who still wants to send in questions, you may do so. We got a little bit extra time, alhamdulillah. So we'll start off with this one. Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu had a deep understanding of the context behind many Quranic revelations. Can you elaborate on his methods of contextual analysis?
I think there's a lot that can be said, and my knowledge is limited, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase us in knowledge. I think that Ibn Abbas was able to combine between having a deep appreciation and understanding of the language of the Arab, as well as a deep-seated relationship with the Sahaba Kiram who were there when the Quran was revealed. And because of his expertise in the language, combined with his full understanding of the revelation, he was able to give us an explanation of the Quran that was unmatched. And that's why when you look in the books of tafsir, you'll always say, and Ibn Abbas said such and such. This combined with the dua of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, وَعَلِّمْهُ التَّأْوِيلِ, and give him the knowledge of interpretation. This particular dua of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam alone is enough of a reason to, as a testament to his ability to interpret the Quran in a way that is really unrecognizable to anyone else from the scholars of tafsir.
The next question is, how long did he live for? So under which khilafah was he at, I guess, the height of his scholarship and meeting with the people?
His scholarship, I mean, he began to be a source of knowledge from very early on. Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu began to teach after he spent some time studying from the Sahaba Kiram radiallahu ta'ala anhum. And particularly because, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has infinite wisdom in everything that he does, in that his youthfulness served as an advantage to the younger of the Sahaba, and particularly to the Tabi'een, or the generation that were the children of the Sahaba. That they were able to have accessibility to someone that was a Sahabi radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and was a direct student of many of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum that were more senior to him. And because of his youthfulness, he was able to then extend his knowledge for many years after that. Allahu ta'ala a'lam on the exact age that he lived, but my understanding is that he lived for an extended period of time and was able to be a source of knowledge for generations.
Something similar to what you answered already, but just to clarify for the brother or sister who sent in the question. How did, or maybe let me rephrase this, his seniority compared to the other Sahaba of the time in terms of knowledge, in terms of scholarship, where would he rank in terms of the other Sahaba?
Ranking seems problematic.
You know, like, or maybe let's rephrase it. How did he differ from the other Sahaba in terms of their scholarship?
The reality that we have to be aware of in terms of the Sahaba is that they had excellence in different areas. You have the Sahaba that were masters in the battlefield. You had Sahaba that were particularly muhaddithin, or scholars of the hadith. And then you had Sahaba that were particularly versed in the Quranic sciences. And no doubt, the specialization of Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu is in the Quranic sciences. But what allows him to be a next level scholar amongst them is the fact that he not only had expertise in one area, but the futuhat, or the openings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu an al-jami', is that he was able to still have, because of him studying under many of the other Sahaba, like this is the eye of Ibn Abbas. He says, I know that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is gifted in this area. And I know that Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu is gifted in that area. And I know that that Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu is gifted in this area. So he would then go to these Sahaba, and he was able to grab a level of expertise and excellence and inherit from their knowledge in a way that was rarely seen in any one single individual. This is the uniqueness of Ibn Abbas, and it is a uniqueness that we can say is rooted again in the dua of the Prophet ﷺ for him, which is a tawfiq rabbani, a divine facilitation. But what that dua's answer was lied in was his proactiveness and the sacrifices that he made in order to go and seek the knowledge from every avenue that was open to him, radiallahu ta'ala anhu.
So I'm going to mix a couple questions together.
No worries.
So, bismillah. A lot of questions about the pursuit of knowledge. You know, we got a lot of young people in the crowd today, mashallah. Where do we start? You know, where, if I have the intentions, I want to become a student of knowledge, where do I start?
There are so many directions to take, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open for you the doors of knowledge. And we know the very famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that ought to be written in gold, that the one who seeks a path to knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens for him or her a path to Jannah. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through all of His beautiful names and attributes that He makes us from the people of knowledge, and that He opens for us and our families the doors of Jannah. The first thing is that accessibility and resources today are beyond imagination of those before us. And I can even say, just in the age difference between me and you, the opportunities and resources and avenues for seeking knowledge these are things we dreamed of. And I know I sound like a broken record ammo right now, but really it's incredible the resources that we have, so many avenues. And the first avenue is, of course, to take advantage of the mashayikh that we have here at the Mosque Foundation, to take advantage of any time that you get with Sheikh Jamal hafidhahullah, with Sheikh Ali hafidhahullah, with Sheikh Ahmed hafidhahullah, and with all of the leadership that's here. Of course, even people have knowledge in different areas. And I will hone in on two of what we call mafatihul ulum, or the keys to knowledge. And the first key to knowledge is knowledge of the Quran, and the other key to knowledge is knowledge of the Arabic language. It's not hard now to go and find an online series and begin to learn from there. But a real student of knowledge dedicates time to studying Arabic. And let me tell you, studying Arabic, studying sarf, studying nahu, studying balagha, these sciences, it's not always fun. And it's not fun for everybody. And it might even feel awkward and has nothing to do with Islam at some point of time. But studying the Arabic language is something that is so critical. And studying the Quran. And that's why one of my favorite quotes of one of my teachers, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless and preserve him, is he says, every believer deserves to be a person of the Quran. Every believer deserves to be a person of the Quran. Don't deprive yourself of being from the people of the Quran. We have this culture, it's in Arabi culture, Desi culture, it's throughout, that there's a look, a vibe to the people of the Quran. And while there is something sacred about that, that vibe is not where they started at. That vibe is what happened to them after they engaged with the Quran. So don't think that because you don't have that vibe, that means you're not a person of the Quran. It just means that you haven't been a part of that journey yet. My dear brother and my dear sister, whatever amount of Quran you know now, You deserve to know more. And it's not about tahfiz alone, it's about engaging with the Quran, learning the Quran, reflecting on the Quran, talking about the Quran, and thinking about the Quran as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words for you and I. And I want to encourage us to tap into these two. Beyond these two, there are weekly durus at this masjid, at other masajid. And sometimes we might go and it's just like four ammus sitting together, leaning against the wall, drinking a cup of shai. And we're like, man, this isn't really anything particularly special. If it is a gathering where we hear قال Allah wa قال الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم, if it is a gathering in which we hear Allah said and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if it is a gathering where we hear the quotes of the likes of Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala an al-jamir' and the likes of Ibn Abbas, wallahi, it is the best of gatherings to be in. Don't undermine it. Don't mind the people that are there. Don't mind who's not there. Don't mind how hyped it is or how hyped it's not. Be a part of those gatherings. And then online, in the online world, mashallah, there are many institutions and organizations that you can go to seek knowledge, inshallah ta'ala. And I would encourage you to go to the mashayikh here and they can make recommendations for you, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala.
Go off that answer, Sheikh. In our pursuit of knowledge, how do we overcome that feeling of loneliness? You know, we always attend these durus with our friends, with our family, but that special pursuit of knowledge, how do we overcome that feeling like I'm in this alone, I'm pursuing this on my own?
I remember, I like to differentiate between loneliness and aloneness. And that just sounds like something you'd hear on Instagram that doesn't really have any meaning to it, but it does have meaning, I promise. Loneliness is forced upon you and something you can do nothing about. And that can be problematic, and it can be particularly problematic for your mental health. Aloneness is a choice. And aloneness is not particularly problematic. People today have a problem being alone because what they're really having a problem with is being with themselves. And sometimes being with ourselves is hard when we haven't listened to ourselves for a long time. When we haven't listened to our negative thoughts for a long time. When we haven't talked to ourselves about the problematic behaviors that we have. When we haven't talked to ourselves about how many Fajr prayers that we've missed. When we haven't talked to ourselves about how messed up it is that we treat our friends or our family the way that we do. So we want to be busy with these people or busy with that or occupied with this or scrolling aimlessly on our phones because what we really want to avoid is what? Listening to this and listening to what's happening inside. And so the pursuit of knowledge generally leads us to aloneness, not loneliness. And that aloneness might be uncomfortable. It might even be painful. But I swear to you that that aloneness is healthy. And it's a part of your growth as a student of knowledge. Because knowledge rectifies you. يُصْلِحِ الْحَالِ. It rectifies your hal. And you can only rectify your hal, your circumstance, if you spend enough time exploring your hal. But if you're just going to ignore your hal, then it's just going to stay exactly where it is right now.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. So we're going to end off with this question. Based off your experience, just some specific books, durus, podcasts, something that we can leave this dars and expand our knowledge specifically on the Sahaba.
I think that the mashayikh here would be a great resource. I know that all of them, mashallah, Sheikh Jamal, Sheikh Ahmed, Sheikh Ali have all done series. And I believe that many of these series are online. There's also a plethora of resources online that I think it would be best that the mashayikh, inshallah ta'ala, make recommendations of. In terms of books, I would say, I think it's a goal of mine in 2023. I actually haven't shared this with anyone, but it's a goal of mine in 2023 to spend more time with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I know that sounds a little sus, like he's in Medina, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he passed away. But my teacher told me two ways to spend time with Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One is reading a hadith every single day. You can get a collection called Riyadul Salihin, which people used to sell their houses in order to buy Riyadul Salihin. Now you can buy it on Amazon, right? And you don't have to sell your house to buy Riyadul Salihin, which is a good news, right? And so you can buy Riyadh al-Salihin and every single day just read a hadith and say, this hadith is a text message from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to me. So that's one way to spend time in the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The other way is to send salawat upon the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam. Increase in salawat upon the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam. These two ways. Other books of knowledge, of course, in Seerah, you have great resources like in the footsteps of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is by Adis Salahi. That's a great Seerah book. In tafsir, of course, you have many tafsir that are available, including the translation of Tafsir Ibn Kathir if you're looking for it in English. There are so many other resources out there that an individual can tap into to benefit. And I would encourage you to schedule an appointment with the mashayikh. Honestly, schedule a time with Sheikh Ali, with Sheikh Ahmed, with Sheikh Jamal, and ask them, I want to seek knowledge. There's a Quran Institute down the street. There are so many marakiz, ilmiya, beneficial institutions around here locally and nationally, and feel the one that fits right for you and get guidance from the mashayikh of the path that you can take, inshallah ta'ala, to seek knowledge. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam.
Jazakumullah khairan, Sheikh, and Jazakumullah khairan for all of you for attending. Just a few departing messages. First, we will announce the winners of our giveaway. Please see the brothers and sisters in the